For centuries, Paiutes had lived along the Owens River. White settlers who colonized Owens Valley found Paiutes irrigating natural grasses with several miles of small irrigation canals.
My grandmother told my oldest sister that when the whites came, they started to push the Indians up into the rocky places where the water was scarce because they wanted the other for their cattle and things. And they came in and they fenced everything up. They start saying, if you want to use my water, you have to have special permission. And the Indians always let the water run. It was never something that belonged to one individual person. It belonged to the whole community.
By 1904, settlers from New England, Switzerland, and Scotland had taken the Indians' land, established farms in a dozen towns, and a steamboat service on the age-old Owens Lake. They dug an elaborate irrigation system, diverting the Owens River into hundreds of miles of ditches. Former Mayor Fred Eaton convinced Mulholland to set out northward across the Mojave Desert in the fall of 1904 toward Owens Valley.
They went by buckboard, which was the only way you could go. It took them about 2 weeks to get there. I think there was a trail of whiskey bottles all the way out.
In 2 weeks, Mulholland and Eaton were on the banks of the Owens River.
At certain times of year, in wet years anyway, you can get a little glimpse of what the river must have been like then and how it must have impressed Mulholland. The Owens Valley is one of the most dramatic places in the world. You have on the one side the Sierra Nevada, virtually every mountain over 14,000 feet. And then you have a drop of 2 miles to the valley floor, and then a rise of almost 2 miles up to the White Mountain Range. Because the mountains stop virtually all weather, it is in the rain, and there's no rain in the Owens Valley. It is a true desert, looking up onto huge snow-covered peaks. And through the middle of it comes what you almost could call a Mississippi River, given the setting. It is so improbable in this harsh desert to see a river that used to be as engorged as the others. And not only was this a river that could take care of the next 20, 30, he probably imagined 50 years of population growth in LA, but it could flow all the way by gravity.
Oh, you know, when he saw the Owens River for the first time, he came back so full of enthusiasm. He says, you know, I've seen something here, water that'll last us into the next century.
And I think Mulholland suddenly must have changed, and he saw himself as a sort of builder of a Roman masterwork, as somebody who kept the great hydraulic engineering tradition alive. I can't tell you what went through his head, but suddenly he was a convert. Having been more of an efficiency guy and a conservationist, suddenly he became an empire builder, almost overnight. And now they were going to capture a river, the only river that kind of accidentally flowed through this desert, and they were going to move the whole river across this 200 plus miles of terrain that they just covered at some risk probably to their lives.
The problem facing Mulholland was that the river was owned. All the water rights were owned by farmers who were irrigating something like 60,000 acres. This was a thriving agricultural area at the time, and it was being further developed by the Bureau of Reclamation.
Now, how in the world were you going to wrest that water away from these farmers and the federal government? That was the dilemma.
Can you imagine today, an American city,
acquiring an entire river for its future? Of course, it goes without saying it couldn't be done, but it was done then.
Posing as agents for a federal project meant to irrigate Owens Valley, Mulholland's men went to the county courthouse. There they convinced clerks to show them deeds, maps, and records of stream flows. Within days, Eaton was quietly buying property and water rights. What ranchers did not know that they were selling their not to a local irrigation project, but to the city of Los Angeles. Without telling Mulholland, former Mayor Fred Eaton bought the only dam site in Owens Valley for himself.
Once the city knew who had the best water rights and who was likeliest to sell those rights, it was basically a done deal. It didn't take very long for them to capture most of that river.
Two people who would ultimately benefit and who knew the whole story of this scheme were the publishers of the Los Angeles Times, Harrison Gray Otis and Harry Chandler.
They were the big promoters and boosters, but they were sworn to secrecy as this was going on. They did not let the cat out of the bag until they couldn't help themselves. And finally, under a headline that said Titanic Project to Give the City a River, they talked about how the whole thing had gone. And, you know, I mean, when you read that today and imagine a major city newspaper just kind of gloating over the triumph of, you know, its artifice and chicanery, it makes you real in a sense. But that was what Los Angeles was like in those days. It was, the climate was one of just getting what you want any way you can get it.
The Owens Valley paper saw the future differently. The still secret aqueduct route would pass through the San Fernando Valley on its way to LA, and someone was buying up near worthless land in the San Fernando. Now, another cat out of the bag. It was a real estate syndicate that would make millions if Owens River water irrigated their newly acquired San Fernando Valley land.
What was happening, all the while these water rights in the Owens Valley were being acquired, was that the San Fernando Valley was being bought up by a syndicate of people who represented the power structure of Los Angeles with a kind of exquisite sense of proportion.
I suppose you could make a case for this being this incestuous cabal of this hidden, you know, Jonathan Club, California Club oligarchy, old boys, WASP network, no Jews, dogs, blacks, Mexicans allowed.
Quietly, the entire San Fernando Valley was bought up by the arch capitalists of Los Angeles for the purpose of irrigating it when the Owens River finally arrived, because Los Angeles wouldn't need all that water for a long time.
If water could be brought to the San Fernando from the Owens Valley, that rangy grassland, that semi-arid terrain could be turned into an absolute agricultural paradise, and there would be great.
With all the cats out of all the bags, citizens would now vote on whether to pay for rebuilding the aqueduct. Mulholland campaigned with a vengeance. Opponents spread rumors that he was secretly dumping water at night to create a shortage. But in the middle of a drought, with the temperature climbing toward 105, the people of LA voted 10-1 to pay for Mulholland's aqueduct, to bring them the river they had just purchased.
I think one thing that gets overlooked when in discussing the aqueduct is that it was a popular move from the President of the United States down to the voters in the city of Los Angeles. This was a highly approved project.